Welcome back to The Big Picture. My guest today is Erie County Clerk Mickey Kearns, and we're talking about a lot of things. We started talking about the green light bill that passed to give licenses to illegal or undocumented aliens, whatever you want to call them. We're all shaped by our personal experiences. I have some questions as to what would happen if this actually goes through and if it's not declared unconstitutional. When I was working in Los Angeles, I had an interesting experience happen to me that kind of plays to what this is all about. And I took a little video when this happened to me, and I'll kind of narrate over it. I was coming back after a shift working for a news department, and this guy in this pickup truck hit me head on I was standing still in an intersection in Hollywood. And this guy just came straight on at 40 miles an hour and hit the live truck head on. Never stopped, never put on the brakes. And he was in such a daze that he just sat there behind the wheel for a while until the fire department came out and got him behind. And that was what was behind his truck. That was in the back of his truck. It was nothing but bottles, and he was illegal. He didn't have a license. He didn't have a registration or insurance or anything. And obviously they gave him a summons, never appeared, and disappeared basically after this, and nobody ever heard from him again. What my question is, now, first of all, if I had not been in that big live truck, if I had been just crossing the street on foot, or on a motorcycle, or if it had been some lady crossing the street pushing a carriage with her baby, that could have been a very serious problem. Had he had a license issued by the state of California, I don't think it would have made a difference. He still would have disappeared and gone back into the woodwork, whether it's back to Mexico or wherever. If this goes through, is it going to make a difference in terms of safety, in terms of documenting people and places and things that happen? What's going to happen?
Well, number one, people who are here illegally have broken the law. They violated the law. So I gave you the example of child support. I gave you the example of someone who maybe has a driving infraction, a serious driving infraction, where their license has been revoked. We are a nation of laws. So right then and there, we know that there is a higher standard of proof with the Real ID Act. And someone who is not here legally can show a lower form of documentation that we would have to verify. It does not set a good precedence for people when you're talking about a country and a nation of laws. That's number one. Two, they talk about safety. And the driver's license now today is not just for driving privileges, it's for identification purposes. When we moved past 9/11 and Congress passed the Real ID Act, that becomes almost a border, a breeder document for someone to stay, a gateway document for someone to stay in this country and to get rights and privileges that unfortunately they don't deserve. They're not a naturalization citizen. We have many people, we do naturalization ceremonies. People who do it the right way, the lawful way, they become citizens. We have people who have the proper documentation. They're students, they work at Moog. We want them to be able to drive. We want them to be able to work here. Western New York is an international city. We say how much we enjoy all the people that come down from Canada that go to Ellicottville for tourism. We understand that, and people like it, and they want to stay. They may meet their spouse here. So we work with people all the time. These are people who are not here legally, and they say their main answer to our complaint when we talk about the constitutionality of this law is that it will be safer. Most of the people who are here, if they're breaking the law, they're not going to get insurance. Our roads aren't going to be safer. So yes, thank God you're here, Phil. Number one, there's a safety cost. We want you to be safe. But number two, there's a financial cost. We're all paying more insurance rates because people are driving illegally. There's a very simple solution. It's ironically, I met with someone earlier. We can clamp down on people who are driving here without insurance and driving illegally to let them know that there will be a consequence for that. We can put them in jail. So when I hear all these different things about whether it's safety, people getting to and from work, the license has evolved and gone beyond just a simple driving certificate. It is now identification, and it's for security purposes now. Finally, the consequence of them getting the right to vote. They will have that right. That's a fundamental right under our Constitution. You know, we could give on a lot of different things, but you're talking about the foundation of democracy that we're looking to overlook on people who are not citizens.
Well, you know, that goes to the motivation behind this, and you know, it may be a jaded outlook, but I'm thinking that a lot of the viewers who are watching this right now may be thinking in the back of their mind that the motivation behind this bill is more political than it is for safety concerns or order concerns. I mean, the things that you mentioned, I know in California they had a bill that wanted to give illegal aliens driver's license, and then separately, and not too long after, they came up with what they called the motor voter ID. Okay, and it was, you know, they tried to separate it enough so that you didn't connect the two, but the end result would have been the same. If you had a driver's license, whether you were legal or illegal, you got to vote. And the motivation was quite clear. I mean, they basically wanted everybody, whether you were legal or illegal, to be able to vote. And it didn't fly.
It's funny because I hear this. You talk about revisionary history. You know, I'm doing this for the constitutionality on it. I had an opportunity to go to New York, and I got to go to Ellis Island, and I talked to one of the park rangers, and we talked about the 3 Ps, and he was really good. He said, you know, and I was telling them, you know, talk about immigration today. He said, you know what, you still need permission to get in this country. You still need the correct paperwork. And there's a process, the 3 Ps. And I said, I'm going to steal that from you. I'm going to take it. And it's so true. I mean, people say, well, that's not true. Not everyone got turned away. Well, yes, people did get turned away back in the early 1900s. Not everyone got into this country. That's why we were a nation of laws. And as you said, do I think there are ulterior motives? You know, when you listen to the sponsors, and they were former colleagues of mine, talk about these are undocumented Americans. They're not Americans. You're not an American citizen until you're an American citizen, whether you're naturalized or you earn that right through following the proper channels. They were calling undocumented Americans. We've lost our way in this country, and at least in the state of New York, where we know that there is a large immigration community in New York. But this is an issue that is coming to a head, and you say nationally, when we have 12 other states that allow people to do that, and people say, well, nothing's happening there. Well, the problem is not all of them are licenses. Some of them say not for federal purposes, not to be used for voting. What New York State is doing is the cherry on the top of the cake. They are trying, New York State, Governor Cuomo is trying to say, we have the best laws for people who are here illegally. And to me, I think that's wrong.
Well, you know, I remember, going to your point, looking at papers, when my grandmother came into this country from Sicily in 1908. She had to be examined, physically examined, to make sure she was healthy, because if she wasn't healthy, she was going back. She had to have enough money to support herself, because if she didn't have enough money, she was going to be declared a ward of the state, and they weren't going to allow her in. They were going to send her back if she wasn't going to be self-sustaining. And she had to have somebody that she was going to come and join here in the country. They asked her all kinds of questions. Are you an anarchist? Are you, what kind of, history do you have? It was a tough task to get through immigration back then. It was not simple. And once you got into the country, you had responsibilities as well, plus the fact that you had to learn the language, and then you had to, make your way in a strange place. And all the challenges today were compounded back then. And so when people compare, oh, we let people in back then and they should be let in now, It's not exactly the same. It is revisionist a little bit. And so that's not an argument that really holds water. It's a different thing. Now, I hesitate getting on to another subject because we've spent most of the program on this. Very briefly, there's the yellow license plates are peeling.
Correct.
And Niagara County has put out a petition to sign to try and avoid the $25 fees to get a new license plate to replace the faulty license plates that we have now. You support that petition.
Absolutely.
If you bring in your faulty license plate in Erie County DMV, it'll be replaced for free at this point. What about in the future?
Well, that's one of the things I talked to Joe about. Joe is a great partner in government, the Niagara County legislator, clerk.
Erie County clerk.
And
the Niagara County clerk, Joe.
You know, Joe's a great guy. And here's the thing. Right now, if you have a peeling plate, we know that it's a defective product. I've been saying this back to my days in Albany as a legislator. We've been asking for these answers. We entered into an agreement, the state of New York, and we got a defective product. So when I became the clerk, I said, listen, we're going to no-fee it. When people come in, now the governor has a new proposal saying that if your plate is 10 years or older, you have to get a new plate at a cost of $25. If you want the same number, it's an additional $20. Remember, we got the enhanced driver's license, that's an extra $30. These costs and these fees start adding up. Unfunded mandated from the federal government, unfunded mandate from Albany. So Joe said, listen, we're gonna start a petition, which I support 100%. We're so busy at the Auto Bureau, we're a little bit bigger than Niagara County. We just can't have our staff do that because we're trying to get people out as quickly as possible. But we support Joe and what he's doing, and we support the Clerks Association. And we're pushing back, and I'm glad the Clerks Association is finally pushing back. There's some really good people in there. And I think I came from a different standpoint because I'm used to fighting being in Albany. But most of the clerks are really good people. They're nice people. And they're toughening up. We're toughening them up. They're doing a good job. Joe's a tough guy. But I think it's good, and I think we have to push back on Albany. We have to, the people of upstate New York, we have to push back and say, Mr. Governor, you represent us also. Enough is enough. Stop.
Right. Well, if he gets his way, that'll be a windfall between $100 and $300 million for the state. Now, I've heard estimates that a new license plate costs between $1 and $2 to manufacture, so that's a hell of a profit. Unfortunately, speaking of profits, we have to go to a break. We're going to wrap up now because this program, as usual, has gone all too quickly. But we will have Mickey back in the future because there's a lot to talk about that is connected with the Erie County Clerk's Office. I want to thank Mickey for being my guest in The Big Picture. I want to thank you guys for watching. This has been your program, and we welcome your comments and your suggestions for shows. Thanks again for watching WBBZ. Thanks for watching The Big Picture, and we will see you next time.